I would be remiss if I did not ask you about Ken Dryden, who just recently passed away. And Ken was your broadcasting partner for the Olympics in Lake Placid, New York. He was sitting next to you when you started talking about believing in miracles. So I give you the floor on the passing of Ken Dryden.
That was a dagger. I had no idea that was coming, and that hit me like a sledgehammer the other day. Ken was so if anybody wants to read about Ken on NHL.com, I think the writer's name is Dave Stubbs, wrote a piece the other day that's just summed Ken up perfectly. Ken was so many things. Don't forget, Ken had a tremendous Hall of Fame career, but he only played like 8 seasons for the Montreal Canadiens.
That's it?
8. He won 5 Vezina trophies, best goalie in the league, 6 Stanley Cups. Retired at 32 because he had a million other things he wanted to do. Among the he was in Parliament. He wrote books. In 1984, when this is 4 years after Lake Placid, he'd already retired. We'd already done the Olympics in '80. I was over in London with my family covering something for Wide World of Sports. We went to visit Ken. He was studying at Cambridge. He went to McGill University. The day after the U.S. had beaten West Germany on a Wednesday in Lake Placid, with the Soviet game to come 48 hours later, Ken got picked up in a car and driven to Ottawa, a 3-hour drive, to take the bar exam the day before the Soviet game. Took the bar exam, clearly passed. I think he was probably number one in the class. Wow. Got taken. He passed the bar exam in the middle of the Olympics. Ken, he was in Parliament. Ken probably could have been the Prime Minister of Canada, but he got disillusioned with the way the government was being run at that time. So, very similar to what we're hearing about a lot of situations in a lot of countries right now. Ken was as thoughtful as anybody I've ever met. And I'll tell you, Rich, we always throw around the phrase Renaissance man too much. I mean, if somebody reads 3 books, he's a Renaissance man. Come on. Ken Dryden was a Renaissance man. Knew a lot about everything, but everything was he was very mild-mannered. And don't forget, he was 6'4", and he wore glasses. And when I was with him, it was like being with a professor. I'm with a professor who needs a pipe, slippers, and a dog at his feet. And this was probably the greatest goalie in the history of the National Hockey League. You miss people when they're gone. I really gonna miss him.
Well, my condolences on that. And is there a story once you took the headsets off after the U.S. beat the Soviets, and it's just the two of you in that booth? I mean, is there the first person you spoke to right as soon as you drop that line and you take the headsets off? There's Ken Dryden.
Well, we didn't quite take the headsets off because I think Jim Lampley went to interview Herb Brooks afterwards. Now, you have to understand, as the crowd is filing out, there's another crowd filing in because Sweden is going to meet Finland in the other, what amounts to semifinal game in the medal round. So in those years, it's not like it is right now. We were going to play the U.S.-Soviet game, which we did on delay at 8 o'clock Eastern.
That's right.
But Rune Arledge was so afraid that if there was a malfunction with the tape machine, where were we going to go? The only other event that night was Sweden-Finland. So Ken and I were made to stay there and announce the Sweden-Finland game into a tape machine. And that's how we spent the next 2.5 hours.
Right after that game.
Correct.
You're not going back to the hotel to download?
Not yet.
And so that game was seen by nobody?
By nobody.
Was it ever seen by anybody?
Yeah, if you were in Stockholm, maybe. or Helsinki, I'm sure you got a big audience back there.
But I guess before that, did you have a moment with Ken Dryden going, that was the most incredible thing I think I've ever seen or talked about? Or any
I think
moment like that?
We knew it away. I mean, it took, and then later on, through the years,
of course,
some of the most wonderful conversations I've had. Kenny and I would talk maybe 2 or 3 times a year.
Look at that picture that's up there. Right there.
Yeah, look at that. How about that? How about that wardrobe, huh?
Tell me you got the sweater somewhere still, dude.
I think that sweater is somewhere around.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Wow. But Ken was, when I first met him in Moscow, because we went over to scout the teams before the Olympics in late 79. And I'm sitting with him the first night we meet. We're having dinner. And he talked to me about the difference between international hockey, which he had played, in addition to the National Hockey League brand, 85 feet wide, NHL versus 100 feet wide, international. And Ken went through about a 5 or 6 minute dissertation, beautifully orated, explained everything about it. And then Ken looked at me and he said, now, do you think this is something that the American audience would be interested in? I said, Ken, yes. But let me introduce you to the world of broadcasting. Can you get that down to 8 seconds? He was, and by the way, he had never done analysis or broadcasting before. He was phenomenal during Lake Placid.
Renaissance man.
Renaissance man. True.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.